welcome back to another edition of the Prepper Recon Podcast. Our mission is to bring you great interviews with preppers from around the world so you can be better informed and better prepared for everything from a hurricane to the end of the world as we know it. Hey preppers and patriots, American Meltdown, the long-awaited sequel to American Exit Strategy, is now available in Kindle and paperback. In American Meltdown, Book 2 of the Economic Collapse Chronicles, the new president, Anthony Howe, signs an executive order banning all semi-automatic weapons. Matt, Adam, and Wesley Baer begin training with their local militia for the battle that is coming. Within weeks of the inauguration, the $700 trillion derivatives bubble pops when rates on U.S. debt skyrocket. The derivatives crisis is the final nail in the coffin of the banking system and the death of the fiat currency system in America. With the dollar gone, commerce comes to a screeching halt. While times prove to be tough for all, survival favors the prepared. Get your Kindle or paperback copy of American Meltdown, Book 2 of the Economic Collapse Chronicles on Amazon today. Today's guest is Andy Hoffman of Miles Franklin. Andy, thanks for coming back on the show.
Always a pleasure, Mark.
Absolutely. So this Friday, it's going to be Jobs Friday. What kind of lies do you think the Bureau of Lies and Statistics will have for us?
Well, it's funny you should say that. I mean, you know, you saw this morning the ADP report, which for years I have laughed about. I mean, it wasn't really until maybe, 2 years ago when the economy was really tanking where all of a sudden people even cared about this dumb report. In fact, no one even cared about weekly jobless claims until a few years ago when they started rigging them with even more seasonal adjustments and then, taking the market up whenever they came out, better than expected because it's noise. But anyway, this ADP report, and if you recall maybe a year or two ago, ADP completely recalculated all its numbers going back several years because they were way too high. And on top of that, they've never really had a good correlation with the NFP report to start with. So, what happens today? They come out with the ADP report and it was vastly worse than expected. But even worse than that, the last 3 months were dramatically revised lower. I mean, last month they went from 175,000 to 124. So, and then on top of that, you look at I'm looking at this great chart on Zero Hedge today that shows literally a perfect correlation over the past maybe 12 years between the ISM non-manufacturing employment index and the NFP payrolls. And this month that just passed was the biggest drop that they've ever, I shouldn't say ever, the biggest drop in this whole data series except for like the end of 2008 when we had the financial collapse. So theoretically, if they don't mess with the numbers, we should see an utterly horrific number. And on top of that, I'm still waiting for the 1.3 million people that left whose unemployment benefits ended in December. I'm still waiting for the BLS to count them as not in the labor force anymore. And I think they're scared to do it because remember, if they do, then the unemployment rate, which was 6.6% last month, will go under 6%, just humiliating the Fed, which had that 6.5% threshold. So not only should those people be there now, there's another 3.5 million people who during the course of this year will also have their unemployment benefits end. And if they don't get jobs, which they won't, we could end the year theoretically at 4%. So what are they going to report on Friday? Who knows? But keep in mind that Janet Yellen just came in office. There's a huge amount of politics going on. And then on top of that, you might have the ECB tomorrow lowering rates and or talking about QE. So there's so much politics going on. The lies, who knows what they're going to try to do.
And then one of the hottest sectors that we've had for jobs in the so-called recovery has been the restaurant and bar industry. And we're seeing new restaurants pop up now like Panera Bread, Chipotle, and Payway. There's a new one around here called Burger Fee, and there's another one called Shula Burger, which are that same type of upscale counter service type of a restaurant. And the full-service restaurateurs like Darden, they're not doing well at all. Darden's selling Red Lobster because it's not profitable. And I just saw the other day they had a commercial for their Olive Garden chain,
and they're offering lunches for $6.95. That's about the same price as a Big Mac combo meal at McDonald's. So it sounds like they're really hurting. If we start losing all of these waiter jobs because people are moving to the upscale counter service restaurants like Panera Bread and Payway and Chipotle, what do you think that'll do to unemployment?
Well, it's funny you call it one of the hottest sectors. I mean, hot meaning it's one of the few sectors that's shown growth. But the fact is, aside from the seasonal adjustments and other things that make any of those numbers suspect, those jobs, the waiters and bartenders haven't even kept up with population growth. So there's nothing hot about it at all. And, as you say, anything, I wrote an article a few weeks ago about how, I've written about want versus need, meaning the things that you want go down in price and the things you need go up in price. And you're really seeing it at like the supermarket where the high-end cereal brands, for instance, like Special K, Kix, their prices are being dropped to the level of the generics. Just like if you go to buy a 12-can pack of Coke or Pepsi, you'll be shocked that their prices are falling because they can no longer compete. And the same with the generics because people don't have money. And the same thing is going on with those restaurant chains. I mean, I remember 10 years ago, Olive Garden was just the hottest thing in town. Olive Garden's all but dead right now. And it's not because people are shifting to upscale. So it's really just people spending less and less. And look, you saw McDonald's, which is the gold standard of eating out, have down same store sales in the last quarter. And at McDonald's, which can adapt to anything anywhere, can't increase their sales, then no one can.
And then Radio Shack, they're closing 1,100 stores. And so if you figure 10 employees per store, that's another 11,000 jobs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can go across the board. If you look at retail in general, now, Radio Shack's problem is that it's obsolete, but retail in general, we're seeing that, partly because of trends where people are shopping online. So there's been a huge amount, this has been in the works for years, a huge amount of losses of jobs where you walk into the store. I mean, it's terrible for commercial real estate. It's terrible for employment. But a lot of them are losing market share to the Amazons and the online things. And part of it is just simply the bad economy. I mean, it was hilarious to me when they just keep harping the new propaganda is the weather. I mean, retail sales in January were down 0.4% and they just kept saying, well, it's because of the weather. But the fact is, in-store sales were flat, but online sales were down 0.6%. So that's just people not buying things. And, so you're seeing a combination of both. And with, Radio Shack, it's the worst of everything.
And then Obama's talking about wanting a minimum wage hike to over $10 an hour. Do you think that'd help bring back some of the jobs?
No, it'll kill them. The fact that he announced the minimum wage increase the day of the State of the Union address, but only for federal jobs, which means the job that don't produce anything. So ultimately we, the public, will be paying for that minimum wage increase and getting nothing for it, is comical. That was his big thing, wealth inequality. But all you're doing by raising the minimum wage is making it worse because more companies are going to fire people because they'd rather not have the employees and have to pay the minimum wage. And of course, the only people that have gotten the minimum wage are these federal workers that don't produce anything. Actually, I was just, in the gym this morning and I saw CNN. It said Obama says that the minimum wage should go up because no one working full time should be in poverty. And it's like, well, but some people working full time are working jobs that just don't produce enough money to get you out of poverty. And some people are happy to work for less than a poverty wage if they have different reasons for doing it. The whole point is any movement to go more socialist and try to increase the minimum wage is only going to be bad for the economy, net.
And then maybe if we weren't devaluing the currency at such a rapid pace, maybe that minimum wage would still actually buy something. So maybe that's
that's the reason they have to do it. It was $3.35 when I was a kid. Now it's $10 for some places. I think in San Francisco it's $12 now, and it's all because of inflation. That's why women started working in the 70s, not because of women's lib, because they couldn't afford to raise a family with just one income. I remember when I was a kid, my father worked. He didn't make that much money, but for a time, we were able to have a decent house and go on vacations. And then my mom had to get a job, and still it wasn't enough because of inflation.
Now, since the last time you were on the show, gold and silver have had a pretty good run. Even though Bernanke told Ron Paul that gold and silver aren't money, people seem to treat the metals like money when the threat of war raises its ugly head.
Yeah, but this happened long before the Ukraine thing. I mean, the gold was 1330 up from 1180 when the Ukraine. It has nothing to do with war. I mean, it's just an added black swan or gray swan, whatever you want to call it. The fact is, they pushed the prices down, not uncoincidentally. I read an article showing how the two worst days of the year were the end of the second quarter and the end of the fourth quarter. It was Eric Sprott that wrote it, because that's when the Wall Street bonuses are the highest. The fact is they pushed the prices below the cost of production. That's why you've seen these massive production reductions, massive losses, massive write-downs that I just wrote about in reserves. So they can't produce the metal for this low. So it really doesn't matter how much money is printed in the world or how much war there is. The prices are too low. That said, the forces, you combine that with the record-setting physical demand in January, by the way. Remember, China, 2013 was a record year. It doubled the previous record year in 2012. And January's number was far higher than the run rate for 2013. So you're seeing massive physical demand around the world. You're seeing the whole manipulation story spread like wildfire. I was writing about that again today. And of course, you're seeing the economies of the world plunge, led by the United States with its so-called recovery. Even I'm having a hard time recalling, aside from the bottom in 2008, this much bad economic data in a row. And of course, the same is going in Europe and Japan, where they're about to raise the sales tax from 5% to 8% next month. The forces, the positive forces for gold and silver are just gaining strength right now. And it would be shocking to see if most, if not all, of last year's ridiculous manipulated attacks are not recouped.
And Andy, you track inventories on the comics. Can you give us an update on what's going on over there?
Well, I mean, anyone could track them. They're there. And I mean, I've always tracked them in a cursory way because they're ridiculous. It's like, I love Harvey Organ. He's one of my favorite guys, but it's like every day today he sends his email. It says, it looks like today's data is compromised. Well, every day's data is compromised. There is no inventory. They say there's 600,000 ounces of registered gold inventory. That's compared to 3 million last year. But of that, maybe 400,000 or 500,000 of it is spoken for from the December, January, and February contracts. And somehow they never get delivered. The gold never comes in and it never goes out. It's not there. It's not there, and they're showing that the actual number's down 80%. So, I mean, I think the whole world pretty soon is going to realize the COMEX isn't even an exchange. And after 12 years of me personally watching all of the trading, all of the price moves occur on the COMEX, all with the same caps and attacks, one day we'll wake up, maybe it's this year, maybe next year, where by the time we wake up here in the States, the gold price will already have made its move for the day and the COMEX will be worthless because no one will use it anymore as a pricing mechanism.
Any thoughts on why bankers don't think life is worth living these days? According to Zero Hedge, we've had 9 suicides from bankers lately.
I try to avoid all that stuff because it's conspiracy theory. I have no idea why. I mean, it looks to me a lot like Goodfellas, like they're killing off a lot of people who know a lot of stuff. And it's not surprising to me that you would see that since, the government is famous for these kind of things with its spying scandals and drones, and JP Morgan right in the middle of all the banker stuff. But I have no idea, what it is, and we'll probably never know.
Now, the Ukraine you mentioned earlier is having some pretty serious trouble. They may be headed towards a civil war. Is that something America needs to be getting involved in?
Well, we feel the need to get involved in everything. But the fact is, in this case, I mean, everything that we've said so far is comical. We can't beat the Russians in a war. And, yesterday they smashed gold down and they take the Dow up and they say Putin softened his stance. And I'm going, what stance did he soften? He pretty much told us to go to hell. And he said, if you try anything on us militarily or financially, we will get you back and then some. And he fired an ICBM test to show him. And, and so, Obama says and John Kerry says, they've broken the international law and there'll be consequences to pay. No, there won't be any consequences to pay. Unless we want a nuclear war, unless we've reached that level that's so down at the bottom of the economy here, where it's time for the powers to be to start a major war to get us thinking that the government should be listened to. There's nothing they can do about it. And they may do it. For all we know, we'll go in and challenge Putin just so that Obama can look strong in front of the elections. But if we do, it'll probably be World War III, and it'll be the end of the world as we've known it for generations. And we, by the way, will lose miserably. If we can't win in Vietnam or Iraq, we certainly can't win in Russia. No, in fact, no one has ever won in Russia, and no one's going to now.
And that's exactly what we did in Iraq. Is basically after the surge, we were basically spent 10 years involved in a civil war, trying to dictate democracy on a country when we weren't even set up to be a democracy, were we? We were set up to be a republic.
The same goes for Afghanistan, and pretty much anywhere we've been. Libya is a mess right now. We haven't done anything except for print money and give it to defense contractors and send soldiers over to get killed, and then destroy and maim, entire civilizations and cause, currencies to collapse around the world. And, that's the extent of it. And it's, that's what the money printers do. And, if they are dumb enough to try something in Russia, it will be because they've decided it's time for the end, because the only result of trying to challenge Russia here will be World War III. And by the way, the Chinese will be on the Russian side.
Yeah. I saw a picture on Drudge Report of Putin and the leader of China shaking hands and making some sort of a pact. And it's funny you should mention World War III, because World War I was triggered by a really small regional dispute in Austria-Hungary. So you think this does have the potential to draw in all the world's chess pieces as well, sort of like that little regional dispute did?
Yeah, well, I don't know if it was a little regional dispute because there was so much tension behind the scenes. But certainly, that one event, with the Archduke, Ferdinand, started. But then again, it's apples to oranges. The Ukraine is not a small regional dispute. The Ukraine is almost like the Middle East of the whole Russian area, because it's, that Sevastopol and the Crimea is the Russians only. I mean, they're allied with Ukraine. It's not theirs, but it's their only warm water port in the entire western part of their country. They will not let it go. And, there's a long history of the Ukraine and Russia. So, I think he's going to put the jaws of death, around that area. And Putin will not let it go ever. And if it comes to World War III to preserve that warm water port, then he'll do it. And don't forget that a third of all the European natural gas comes from pipelines that go through that area. So it's an incredibly dangerous place. And the only reason that we would go in there and actually try to challenge them is because our leaders have decided the only way to stay in power is to create a police state and start a world war.
And then to change the subject, Mt. Gox, which was Bitcoin's largest exchange, was either hacked and several accounts cleaned out, or there was some foul play within the company. $500 million worth of Bitcoins were stolen. I thought Bitcoin was the most secure form of money and the answer to all that ails our fair kingdom.
Well, I've done a lot of work on Bitcoin, as if you've read my stuff. I mean, I'm no expert on it, but I know as much as pretty much anyone except for the tech geeks, about what they're trying to do. And the fact is that the only reason that it's had its big surge in value is because all the money printing here that's created this big bubble in stocks like, Twitter and the NASDAQ. it was the perfect story. I was a stock analyst for many years. It has all the makings of the perfect kind of internet bubble type story. There's a limited supply of it, and it's going to take over for money. And now that everyone fears the fiat currencies, plus you can't naked short it, so everyone got all these people bought it. And again, there's a big difference between the platform of Bitcoin trying to be, an alternative currency, which is one thing entirely. Which, may have some merit down the road, although it will fight through the wars of government regulations and hackers and all that. And then there's the, quote, investment, where people simply buy it like an internet stock, and they have no idea what they're doing, most of these people. And they're just simply buying it because they think it'll go up some more. It has no value. It's no intrinsic value. And yeah, Mt. Gox was by far the biggest. I mean, it's like the LBMA in the gold market. That's what Mt. Gox was. And, my personal opinion was it wasn't fraud, but they just couldn't, the hackers just broke through it and stole everything. That's my personal opinion, whether I'm right or wrong. There's no reason why Mark Karpellis, who was a zillionaire to start with, would be trying to do this. And so people lost money. And there's been all kinds of hacking software that's been breaking in. There was another one, Flexcoin, the same thing just happened to. There's something called Ponybot, which is stealing Bitcoin. But the hardcore Bitcoin people say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't get it. Trust me, this stuff is amazing. And I don't know if it's amazing. I really couldn't care less. The fact is, it has no intrinsic value, whether Bitcoin is a strong platform or not in time. We're talking about protecting yourself from what could be the biggest economic cataclysm of all time. And I assure you that when it happens, Bitcoin is not going to be the top choice of people, especially people who hold them in exchanges over the internet instead of their personal computer wallets, which is what most people do, by the way.
And if you've got your gold and silver buried in a coffee can in the backyard, nobody's going to find it until there's a couple walking down going for an afternoon walk 150 years from now. Is that right?
That's right.
They don't know it's there. Nobody knows where to find it.
Talking about the couple in California, they found, some coins from the mid-1800s, U.S. Eagles, real government-minted coins, $27,000 face value, worth over $10 million today. And, I wrote an article right after that called The Definition of Value, and basically saying this is what happens to the value of gold when it just sits there in the ground doing nothing and money is printed as it always is. Think of what do you think a gold coin today will be worth 150 years from now? And on top of that, what do you think a dollar, which has lost 99% of its value already, will be worth in 150 years, let alone a Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So get your ounces while they're there to get, right?
I can't emphasize enough. We've already had 4 or 5 major shortages just in the past 5 years. Sometimes because the price was up, sometimes the price was down. 2008, 2011, twice last year, once in January and once in April. And when the next one comes due to a crisis, like a 2008 crisis, forget it. That'll be it. There'll be no more Miles Franklin. There'll be no more bullion dealers because you won't be able to buy coins anywhere. Certainly not at this price.
And Andy, can you tell the folks where they can find your daily blog and your weekly podcast? Of course, we'll have the links on the show, but just for the listeners on Stitcher, sure. iTunes, and YouTube.
Sure. I'm at milesfranklin.com. We're one of the largest bullion dealers in the nation. In fact, we just kicked off our 25-year anniversary celebration this week. We're giving away some free coins. Every single day, we write, I believe, the best blog in the entire financial business. There's 3 of us, and we do it for free.
Well, thanks again for taking time out to come on the show.
Always a pleasure.
Whether your plan is to bug out or bug in, CampingSurvival.com has all of your preparedness needs, including fish antibiotics, long-term storage food, water filters, bug-out bags, and first aid kits. Use coupon code Prepper Recon for 5% off your entire order at CampingSurvival.com.